sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are.
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair. Senator Warren, quote, said Senator Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
So, of course, we have a couple of big stories this week. The thing is that the biggest story this week, once again, is the travel ban to those 7 Muslim countries.
Yep. Just keeps getting brought back up, man.
So we're going to go ahead and not start with that this time, so as to not start every single episode on the same
For the next 7
story.
months or so.
Right.
So figure it out.
Well, don't worry, though. We will address that. Also, I want to quickly say that I'm having a child tomorrow morning. So there's a possibility that there could be a week gap in episodes. We'll
Just
see.
might be.
We'll see
Yeah.
what happens. We'll see how this process goes. But, you know, my first son, my first child, so I know nothing about what's about to happen in the next week. So
You're in for a good time.
yeah, I know. I have a feeling I am. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the other big news the other big story in the news this week, which was Mitch McConnell telling Elizabeth Warren,
Just shut the hell up.
Shut up. Go sit down.
Puts baby in the corner.
Feminazi. So anyway, so what do you think? I mean, here's what happened. Elizabeth Warren, first of all, the Democrats have been doing every single thing that they possibly can to drag out the process
Right.
of
Who needs to fill government positions, right?
Right.
We don't need those.
Right, yeah. So Donald Trump is having trouble getting his cabinet filled.
Dream cabinet. So good.
They're the best. I promise so much awesomeness.
Besides, that's his voice. She sucks.
It'll make your toothpaste spin. So anyway, so that's so the thing is, Elizabeth Warren, along with all of the other Democrats who have literally, like, for 2 weeks now, they've been getting up, and every time they oppose a cabinet member, which seems to be everyone. And we'll comment on Chuck Schumer in a minute, because I have a
Good.
bone to pick with
Look,
Chuck Schumer.
You gonna cry for me, cry baby, cry.
But the Elizabeth Warren story is that in staying true to what Democrats have been doing for the last 2.5 weeks, she wants to slow down, like her party does, the process or the time frame in which these cabinet appointees get approved. So Democrats who have no power, all they can really do is hold things up. So they're going to oppose, they're going to question. They've been keeping Congress in session until like 4 a.m. every night so that Republicans can't sleep.
My problem also is that they say their outcome before they do it. So they're like, we need to get the answers, but I'm definitely voting no. And then they spend like 3 days asking questions. I'm like, you're just being a dick.
Well,
like,
right. Well,
you already
and-
know what you're voting.
and
Your vote doesn't count.
To
so
to that
that's what
point
you're
too,
pissed
I'm
about.
sure if you ask Chuck Schumer, will these people get approved? He would tell you, yeah. they're going to get approved. Like, we're going to fight it, and
Right.
everything's going to be jaw-dropping and stomach-wrenching and all this stuff. Somebody get that guy some
Yeah,
medicine.
he wakes up in perpetual anguish every day.
Right. But he knows, and we know, that they're all going to get through. And if Betsy DeVos got through, they're all going to get through.
Right.
So,
And Sessions already got through.
Right.
So
So-
that did a whole lot.
basically what Elizabeth Warren did was she stood up and she started reading a letter from Loretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King, about Jeff Sessions being appointed. Loretta Scott King wrote a letter 30 plus years ago, when Jeff Sessions was being appointed to a federal judgeship. And
Which he didn't get.
What?
Which he didn't get.
Which he didn't get. And
that was their big claim, is that he's racist.
Right.
And that's why.
so in that she points to accusations of keeping black voters from getting out to the polls in the late 80s, early 90s,
Right.
and all this stuff. So basically, now what's interesting too, and you can judge whether or not her letter is right. I don't know that first of all, it's an opinion piece. There are some
Right.
legal things that you can look at when Jeff Sessions was, a federal prosecutor. He prosecuted 3 civil rights leaders for trying to help elderly voters who couldn't get to the polls. What they were trying to help them do was get registered so that they could be absentee ballots, and so
Right.
they prosecuted these 3 civil rights leaders for helping elderly black voters send in absentee ballots. All of those civil rights leaders got acquitted. Nothing came of that case. Everything was dropped because it does sound like a BS case. But based on that, people have attached racist to him.
Right.
And so
Now,
Elizabeth Warren read a story, or read the letter that Loretta Scott King wrote about how Jeff Sessions is racist, and this is how she was trying to stall. This was her stall tactic. So
It's like instead of reading Green Eggs and Ham, you just read this letter.
right.
Same thing.
Yeah, essentially. Though this was for an appointee and not shutting down
Just
the
shut
government. So
I want to run the government. I love shutting it down.
Ted Cruz is still a D-bag.
Yes, he is.
But so anyway, halfway through her reading of this letter, because Loretta Scott King accuses Jeff Sessions of being a racist, Mitch McConnell stands up and reads a rule from the Senate, which is basically, and I'm not a journalist, so guess what? I didn't find out what number rule that was. So
811 squiggly line.
right.
So like the Sims money.
But he
whatever the fuck.
basically, there's a rule in the Senate that says that you cannot impugn the motives of your colleagues. So
and you can't paint them or something in a negative light or
in a
something.
negative light, which I
Fucking
kind of
bullshit rule, man.
I have an issue with the rule existing in itself. But do you think it was right that he used it?
I think that he has every right to use it. I personally don't. I think that that's free speech. Who cares what she says?
Yeah, no,
You
I
know?
agree with you. Well, and you gave her more of a news story. Like, you gave her more publicity than she
Right.
would have got if she would have just talked and sat down.
Yeah, because of course, I mean, Elizabeth Warren is obnoxious and loud, and I can't stand anything that she does. So of course, as soon as that happened, she went to social media and
Right.
she's doing it, and she's got her angry chipmunk face going on, and it
Well,
was,
remember,
ugh.
the indivisible left was already there. They were already ready. Like, they were watching,
Right.
they were waiting for it to be a story, and that's
Right.
exactly what Mitch McConnell gave her. Now, some could argue, and some have argued, that
The
Mitch
mastermind thing,
Mitch
yeah.
McConnell is extremely calculated, and what he was trying to do was paint her as the face of the Democratic Party, which I don't think, as somebody who, I won't call myself a Democrat, but I will say that I tend to dislike a lot of things that I hear from Republicans more than Democrats, which makes me I voted for Republicans less often, because what they're saying doesn't impress me, whereas what Democrats are saying doesn't really impress me. It just doesn't make me. It just doesn't turn me off as much. So I would say for people like me, though, who I consider myself like the reasonable middle left,
You love Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren is crazy. Elizabeth Warren is
Yeah.
not the face that you want
She's
of
the
that party.
Democratic Donald Trump. I mean, she's a bully. She's obnoxious. She just comes up and attacks people.
Right.
She makes a lot of noise and a lot of fuss. And she doesn't. I don't know. That irritates me. If Democrats want to win, go with Cory Booker. Go with someone who's actually got
I
a
agree.
good thought process and doesn't, just fly off the handle and
I agree.
be crazy.
Now you could call in to question some of Cory Booker's latest stunts.
Well, Van Jones. I'll take Van Jones too.
But here's I won't take Van Jones.
I like Van Jones, even as a Republican.
Yeah.
I mean, like 25% of the points he make piss me off, and I think they're off the mark. But the rest of it's, I think,
Here's
good.
the thing. I think Van Jones is a very intelligent guy. He's usually pretty reasonable, but he has a show now, and I don't like his
With the
show
Messy
now.
Truth?
Yeah,
I like it.
I don't.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw Poppin' Tops.
Poppin' Top.
I saw Bill Maher on there the other night and was just like, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of Bill Maher. Bill Maher's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
But Van Jones wasn't handling him well, and I was just like, man, come on.
on,
If you
Van.
can't handle Bill Maher, you can't
white
handle
man.
Ted Cruz. So
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
I think that Republicans need to be weary of falling into the same mistakes that the Democrats made, where it was just lining the pins up that you thought were the easiest to knock down, and then having it completely fly in your face and explode.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they were all saying, is like, oh yeah, please let it be Donald Trump, please.
Yeah.
As he defeats 19 people
Well, and
in
I'm
a
sure,
row.
and here's the thing too, as far as Elizabeth Warren is concerned, because I'm sure there are a lot of Republicans, Mitch McConnell included, that would love for Elizabeth Warren to be the face.
But you don't know what's going to happen.
the
All she
left.
has to do is one good moment, and
And-
then she gets all those angry people riled up and along with her.
And I just jokingly poked fun at the indivisible left. But let's talk about the indivisible left, because I like to think, or at least I've thought up until maybe a couple weeks ago, that there are more moderates on both sides than there are extreme.
I would think so.
Okay, maybe not. Here's my argument.
I'm going, it's the more
The
extreme.
Bernie movement was freaking huge, right?
Yeah.
And like it didn't transfer over to Hillary Clinton because it's
She
extremely,
cheated against him.
Well, she cheated against him. It's an extremely more left. Like you remember through the entire election process, my argument was Bernie's not a Democrat. Like, and Democrats that think that Bernie's a Democrat.
That's why
like,
it's no secret that I was a Bernie guy. Like, even though I'm a Republican, even though I'm a conservative, I liked some of what Bernie Sanders said. I did the first thing initially where I was like, this guy's rainbows and all that. And for a lot of reasons he is. But at the same time, when I started to look at his proposals, they started to make a little bit of sense. They all had to work. And we see how politics is nowadays. If you don't get your way, you're just going to just try to make sure that the other person doesn't get his way either.
Right.
So I think it would have come crashing down, just like, I was very excited for Trump afterwards, after Hillary Clinton just destroyed Bernie,
Right.
just butt fucked him over a barrel, and then he
But
thanked her for
here's
it.
the thing. Those Bernie
He lost a lot of respect in my eyes for that.
that Bernie movement was a very, very amped up movement.
Yeah, but he's lost me now. Like, I'm not going back to him.
Right, I know. But that movement seemed to transfer over to the Women's March in D.C. And
Yeah.
the Women's March in D.C. really, really brought the left together, because what they saw in themselves was, we just brought 3 times the amount of people to the city that Donald Trump brought out yesterday. Maybe
I thought it was 2 times.
Maybe that's what you said.
Alternative facts.
I'm just
Oh
making
my God.
alternative facts. I'm just making stuff up now. I'm not. Look, I always will fall back on, I'm not a journalist. Do your own homework.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean that's fair.
But here's the thing. Like, if those people, if the left is unified into this loud, sometimes violent, shutting
Sometimes
down.
they just killed the Imperial Wizard of the KKK. You hear that? That just happened. Just found his body in the Missouri River. We've
And
seen a lot of.
You know that was an anti-Trump guy? Are you sure?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was an anti-KKK guy.
Are you sure?
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that guy didn't necessarily vote for Bernie and wouldn't necessarily vote for Elizabeth Warren. So let's just keep it at.
Probably voted for Trump. But violence is on the rise. So like,
Violence is on the rise. But what I wonder, and my whole point, and I know that was a long tangent, but my whole point is, those people that set Berkeley on fire and those people that
ones
are
that defended
shutting down Republicans, much like the Tea Party did, those people are Elizabeth Warren people. So if Mitch McConnell successfully makes her the face of the Democratic Party, that may not be a good thing.
And that's my point exactly. Don't get excited about lining it up.
There may be more loud,
I don't think there are.
ruckus liberals than there are people who consider themselves the center left
I
or
still
the
think
reasonable left.
that is the vocal minority of the left.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. So do I. I mean, shit. I would hate to be.
But they keep showing up, and they keep. And I know the Tea Party did too, but this looks different than the Tea
It is
Party.
different because
This
the Tea
looks-
Party was
this looks
consolidated
bigger than
into
the-
just like Capitol Hill type incidents. Like that's what they were for. They were trying to do. They were much more involved in the actual process of legislation. These guys just protest fucking everything. They're just pissed at everything. It's like, oh, I don't like this. 5 million people showing up to riot your shit.
Right.
So it's different as it's a much larger scale and it's just a broader topic. Like
Right.
it's not focused. And if they get focused, we can have a problem.
Well, they look focused. I don't know. Have you?
I don't think they're focused. They seem to just be protesting everything
Well,
without an actual reason.
have you looked at their plan? Like, have you looked
I haven't.
at?
They don't give me their plan. They don't email it to me.
They
to
do
review.
actually. You can go find it on YouTube. Look up. Oh, I don't.
I'll just join all of Elizabeth Warren.
I'll
and-
put a link to it in the comments, but it's like the indivisible left or something like that's not a joke. That's what they're calling themselves, and it is organized so much better than what the Tea Party was. Like they are literally telling you
I'm
what
pretty sure that
streets
the
your
Nazi Party
congressman-
organized, so I'm going to make that parallel, and they're all Nazis.
No, I wouldn't make that parallel because
Logic seems sound to me, bruh.
jumping to Nazis is never probably the right thing to do.
No, it's not, and I don't think they're Nazis.
Unless-
Strike that from the record.
Yeah, but unless you're talking about Donald Trump. So no, that's a joke. That's a joke. Sometimes my tone doesn't come off as sarcastic.
Right. We don't believe in Nazis. We promise.
We don't. Right. Unless
Unless they're neo-Nazis.
right.
Those
Unless
guys
they're
are real.
dead in the Missouri River. That's all I'm saying. So I don't know. Anyway, back to the whole thing that started the tangent of
Right.
Elizabeth Warren's people. Elizabeth Warren got shut down this
Right.
week by Mitch McConnell, which made her a huge story. And what I wonder is, let's not even focus on the fact that she got attention from it. Let's focus on the fact that the rule exists. You think you should be allowed to impugn?
I think
Do you understand why the rule is there? While I don't let
Not
you
in
answer
modern
the first
times.
question I asked you. I
No,
agree.
not in modern times. And I understand it was put in place because there was a lot of fighting that would happen, like actual come to fist during
Right.
the Senate sessions, and then duels, as we've discussed as well.
So that the listener
So-
knows, the point of the rule when it was adopted way back when was so that, in layman's terms, was so that things couldn't get so personal. And
Right.
and it's been kept because you're right. In back in those days, like, people actually dueled. People died over calling each other out in Congress. So, like, I get it. Now, fast forward to modern history, the reason that they would argue that it's still there now is because a lot of these guys can throw rocks at each other when they're talking about healthcare or something, but then they have to turn around and be in the next committee on energy.
Right, it creates bad
independence
blood and all
together.
that.
It creates bad blood. If
Who
you're
are we kidding, man?
If you're dropping names.
If to avoid bad blood was the reason this rule was put into place, you have fucking failed because
Right.
there is nothing
Well,
but bad blood right
I
now.
don't think that they didn't really have a good counter rule. They're like, okay, so you can't
say anything mean ever.
well, no, and they didn't even say that. You can say mean stuff. You can't say the congressman's or congresswoman's name, and you can't say Republican or Democratic Party. So a statement that you would not be allowed to say would be something like, I recognize that the Republican from Missouri, Mitchell Hernandez, is a big old D-bag.
No, man. That ain't true.
You couldn't cut off the D-bag part. You still couldn't say that because I broke two rules. I said his party and I said his name. So the alternative, though, is
The good gentleman from Missouri
Is a
sitting
D-bag.
apart from me is a douche.
right, and that's fine. And
Right.
so that's where, like, I kind of
Much more civil.
the rule itself is kind of ridiculous, and I
I say
wonder.
let them fight, man.
I wonder if Mitch McConnell actually, like, I know there's that whole Mitch McConnell's a genius. He's super
I don't buy it.
calculated. I think he was just frustrated. Like,
Yeah.
dude, you guys have been holding this up for 2.5 weeks. Like, no.
Someone
we're-
pointed out the rule book to him, and he was like, here you go. I got
sit down,
this.
sit down, old crazy lady,
Shut up.
pantsuit.
I don't think he had some grand scheme in mind or anything like that. I just don't see it happening.
I don't know. People around him paint him as Frank Underwood. But
That's terrifying. This little turtle coming at you. Come here, boy.
right, meet me in the train station.
That guy, dude. I don't know.
Spoiler alert.
I don't like Mitch McConnell. I don't like any of the leadership. Like, it just seems like every time, if you're like, look, besides Paul Ryan, I still like Paul Ryan
I
quite
still
a
like
bit.
Paul Ryan.
Yeah, because he just wants to crunch the numbers. He's like, come on, guys, let's just
He
do.
wants to walk around.
Let's just do math.
I have a buddy that works in closely with government up in D.C. and he had interned in the Capitol for a little while, maybe a year or two, and he said that Paul Ryan literally walks around the walks around the halls of Congress all day with headphones in, and that's not necessarily because anything's playing. He just doesn't like to interact with the people around
That's
him.
antisocial, man.
So the common joke though with Paul Ryan is that he's like blaring Rage Against the Machine in those headphones. Twisted Sister, we're not gonna take it.
Yeah, I like Paul Ryan. He's a fucking dork, but I
He
do
is
like
a
him.
dork, but
He
I
brought
do.
his mom to the campaign trail. I was like, "Here's my mom."
Right.
Like,
I do like
all right,
him,
guy.
though.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you're like a Bush and your
Nerd.
mom is known. But he's just like, this is Nancy Ryan.
Here we go.
Who is this? Who
I'm
knows?
always smiling, but yeah, I like him. But Chuck Schumer pisses me off, which we can get into that in a second. But especially Mitch McConnell, because he is that opposition guy. Like he's
Yeah.
the guy that the quote comes from is, "We're gonna make Obama a one-term president," and that makes me mad because so many problems have derived from that exact mentality, and now the left is getting it.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I'm not a fan of Mitch McConnell. I am not a fan of, I don't know, a lot of the leadership, like you said, it just does. With Chuck Schumer, let's get into Chuck Schumer now.
Yeah,
We teased
let's do
it
it.
twice. Let's get into Chuck Schumer now. Chuck Schumer needs to stop. Like, he's not, first
He's
of
not
all.
gonna stop.
And Republicans, when he first came in, I'm sure congressmen as well as the pundits, but I know a lot of pundits in at least conservative radio were really excited that it was going to be somebody like Chuck Schumer because Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump are friends in real life, were anyway.
right. Well, we
friends
saw
in-
that with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton.
Right. So
Friends no more.
what they thought was going to happen was that Chuck Schumer was going to be somebody to reach across the aisle and maybe give Donald Trump some Democratic votes, and then that way, like it's a win-win. Good things, they make compromises. Good things
Yeah.
get passed on both
But
sides.
politics is toxic right now.
But
And
politics
then-
is toxic.
And just the leadership, once you
And
get
I
into
would
it.
thank the Tea Party for that. Like the Tea Party,
They really did. They
Really
started the
poisoned-
escalation. Yeah, they did.
Really
And that
poisoned
was-
the political process.
Yeah, they did. And that was why I was so against, even though being a conservative and Republican, I was still like, quit fucking up. Let the John Boehners and those guys run the show because I felt they knew what they were doing to a degree. Like there is a large portion of bullshit that goes on from them as well, so it doesn't mean, but still the Tea Party took it to a different level where opposition was an occupation.
Right.
And that's fucked because that's not your job. Your job is not just to say no. You're supposed to do things better.
Right.
If you don't like it, and if you don't have power, that sucks. You don't have power. Wait a little bit. Try to get it back. Find ways to convert people. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
So,
But instead, what they're doing, and Chuck Schumer, I think, and I get it, he's the voice, so like he's gonna be the worst because he's the one that gives statements every day. But it's just like for the
him with his
last
weird-shaped head.
the last three. Well, and he's like that. Who's that cartoon? That like little sad puppy. That's just like
Whoa, droopy face.
right? Or like Deputy Droop.
Deputy Droop.
Like, dude,
I don't know if
stop
that's
it.
right, but I'm gonna say
For the
it is.
last three appointees, his three quotes were,
Kick my
my stomach is turning over this pick to this department.
Yeah.
My jaw dropped to the floor when this person was, and then he cried over the other one. It's like, dude, get this guy some antidepressants or something. Like
Right.
he is a mess. He is
I'm s-
totally a mess.
I'm sorry, and I come from a place, and people can say whatever they want about it, but men don't cry on TV. Like that doesn't fill
John
me.
Boehner.
I know that doesn't fill me
Glenn
with
Beck.
confidence when the men who are supposed to be leading us start crying. I know
I
it's like,
don't-
don't repress men
know,
and
you
whatnot.
just-
I don't care. Like,
Any feminist that's listening.
oh, I do not care in the slightest. Like I don't
is
want to see the man
freaking
following
out
me.
right now.
It's like if you're going into war or something and your commander just starts crying, you're like, whoa, what? I'm
Here's the
following
thing.
this guy?
Okay,
What's
but
happening?
To be fair, Chuck Schumer's not going into war, although
But he's
he
going
might
to political
feel like
war.
it.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that he missed his calling in dramatic theater.
I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't have a problem with dudes crying. I have a problem with anyone faking it. Like, don't fake it. When Obama cried
Yeah.
over Sandy Hook, I cried over Sandy Hook. I don't
Well, a lot of people
have,
did.
I don't have a problem with Barack Obama giving his speech and actually having tears. I believe those tears. That was a sad, messed up situation. And when it first, like, it's easy to talk about it now because it's several years later.
Right.
But when
and so
we
many
were
other ones happened as
when
well.
we were living that, and when we were seeing pictures of kindergartners, first graders,
Yeah.
20 3 of them up on the TV screen on Fox and CNN as the days were passing. Like, that was messed up. That was emotional. I was upset. I was very like, what do we
Right.
do to fix this?
That makes sense. What did he cry over anyway? Was it the Muslim ban? Travel
Chuck
ban,
Schumer?
sorry. Yeah. Was
I
that
believe,
what he did?
I believe it was. I think it was. And to me,
I mean, I guess people are crying over it, but I don't
well,
agree with that bit. But
I don't agree with the Muslim ban, but I didn't
Travel ban.
cry. Oh, well, we can debate that in a second. But but I didn't. It didn't. And I guess to me, it's because we're all immigrants, but I'm not really an immigrant. Like, I've been here
I'm an
forever.
immigrant 7 generations ago, and I was only
Right.
there for 1 generation. But for some reason, the left wants to say that. I have a big issue with that, and I am going to go off on a tangent here for a second. But being of Hispanic descent, everyone always wants to call me Mexican, and I played into it for a long time because I just thought I was Mexican.
Wall jumper.
I swam, damn it. But no, it's irritating because it's like we've only been there for 1 or 2 generations in Mexico. I'm 3rd generation, American, but somehow I'm Mexican. It's like, that's not how it works. Where you're born is where you're from.
Right.
All these people, it's like from Mexico, they weren't there, They
Right.
had to come from someplace else.
Now, I do, on the flip side of that, though.
But
and
it's so obsessive about saying you cannot be American. Like, American we're a melting pot. It's like, no, if you're born
I
here,
agree with
you're
that.
American.
I did hear an interesting phone call while I'll continue your tangent for a second. Because I listen to a lot of conservative radio throughout the week just to
And I don't, which
just
is-
to hear. I do.
Which is weird. It's like, all right.
I'm a really big fan of Brian Kilmeade. He's like one of the only rational conservatives on the radio that's just like, that will literally, like, he will call out both sides,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that.
I find if
him.
you're not listening to Rush Limbaugh, you're probably going to hear some rational conservatives.
You would be surprised at how many aren't.
I don't listen to it, so I probably would be
You
surprised.
would be
Yeah.
especially in like the St. Louis market. Like, we have a lot of
Really?
like guys that I'm just like, dude, you don't believe that? You came up with that last night when you heard Sean Hannity say it, and Sean Hannity is a jackass. So
Knows how to throw that football.
right. So anyway, but what was interesting was I heard this call, and this lady was talking about how now the call that I heard that triggered her calling in was some black guy had called in on the radio station and
That's racist.
was like, all white people can't see racism. And the host was trying to explain that, like, yes, I can. Just because I haven't been a victim of it doesn't mean that I can't see it. I
Right.
can see it happening. I can have empathy and sympathy for those situations. And the dude was just not having it. And this guy was irrational. And he
Right.
was just like, no, you're white, so you have a privilleged life, and you don't
Yeah,
see
that's a
all this stuff.
common argument
And
that they
while
like
I
to
will
make.
agree that white privilege does
Which is bullshit.
systematically exist, or it has systematically existed.
In instances, it can exist. I do not believe that just because you are white. I've seen a lot of people that are underprivileged and they are white.
Yeah, I don't think just because you're white
Right.
that you're privileged, but I
think
do
that's a bit
think,
of a racist statement to have.
But I do think that, like, if you look at like voter laws, you look at all these other
Right.
factors,
Well,
like,
voter
yes,
laws are-
systematically we have
voter
we-
laws, and I totally think that there is definitely, like, Republicans are guilty of this 100%, where they have, when people say they've tried to suppress large black populations from being able to register to vote, typically poor, I 100% agree with them. They have. I just don't think it's for racist things. I think it's more political than racist.
Yeah,
They just think that if these guys start to vote, they'll vote against me, and
Right.
so they try to suppress it.
Right.
I'm sure there's some racism that's involved as well, but I think it's a more political
Oh, yeah,
thing
I totally
than,
agree.
than that. But
Totally
I
agree.
completely think that it's happening because,
Yeah.
come on, guys. Like, you literally just stopped them from voting
Right.
multiple times.
So, like, no, I agree with you. I think that it does happen, and it is for political reasons.
just
More
like I
so
think Democrats
than
are
it
so
is-
adamant about trying to get them to vote because it helps them.
right, politically.
It's a political thing. Yeah.
I agree.
They don't
with
really
you.
give a shit.
So, but here's what was interesting. So this guy calls in. He has this whole thing. He's telling 4 white hosts of the show that they are privileged and they cannot understand racism, and they are trying to have a rational conversation. This is the Dave Glover show. Dave is trying to have a rational conversation with this guy and say, look, like, I can see it, and isn't it kind of racist of you to say that because of my skin color I can't understand?
Right.
Okay, so we all can make up our own minds on that argument in and of itself. I
Right.
tend to think that Dave is right, and that the black caller who called in, while I'll acknowledge that white privilege is existent, it doesn't mean that if you're white you are privileged, and to think that because you are white and privileged that makes you privileged, that in itself is racism.
Right.
And there's no such thing as reverse racism. Racism is
It's just
racism.
racism.
It's just racism.
No, but yeah, I mean, the common rebut to that is they say, well, it has to be systematic and this, that, so it's only white people. It's like, first off, America's not the only other country that's ever existed. And white people don't have some special monopoly over slavery. That has been happening in almost every
Right.
civilization that we've seen throughout time. Remember the Egyptians?
Right.
Remember those guys? They
Yeah.
love slavery.
Well,
Guess where that's
and
located.
and it's not like
But regardless,
look,
it happened here.
Yeah,
So-
I don't even want to go down a path of history and
History and
American
racism and
slavery.
Right, I just
but
don't
here's what I will
understand-
say. Here's the point that I'm going to try to wrap up real quick. Is so this lady calls, right, a white Republican Christian lady.
A racist.
She's self-described, all those things. I'm not
Right.
painting her that way.
All right.
And she says, and here's where I laughed, because to prove that she wasn't racist, which I think sometimes make
where
you
you gonna
seem
go?
racist.
Yeah, it definitely does.
She
This is gonna be
goes,
tricky.
I work with black people.
And I don't hate them. I mean, I'm totally...
First of all, she was like, I know 4 black people, and I think when you know the
Oh.
number of the
Yeah.
minority, the number of
You
people,
mean
in that
well,
minor-
but it's coming off wrong.
it's coming off wrong. So that was a rough start. A few pebbles that she tracked over.
Oops.
Here it gets better. She goes, so we're having a conversation with me and my coworkers, my black coworkers, about white privilege, and they can't understand that just because I'm white, I'm not privileged. So far, so good. Then she goes to justify her non-racism, or at least that's how I took it. I am mixed 172 different ways. Stop right there. Like, it doesn't matter.
I counted.
It doesn't matter where you're going from here, because that just sprinkled on a little bit more doubt on your racism.
Right, it's like,
Like, did you really count? Because
you-
I
You got a tally sheet? I'm not racist. I'm not racist. Come
Right.
on.
She's like, I got a part of Indian, and my great grandma was Irish, and
Right. Conclusion, people like to fuck.
So
Good job.
Right. So here's my thing. Does that make her a racist for saying that? No, it doesn't. Does it make her? Does it put a little bit of doubt in somebody's head? Yeah, it does.
Yeah. You didn't put the topic to rest, I'll say that.
Is that fair? Probably not on both sides, but we
Right.
need to stop being so sensitive about it. And just like the caller before her, who was arguing that just because I'm white means that I'm privileged, step back for a second and try to think. I think what would be really beneficial to everyone individually in society is whatever judgment you just made about the person across from you, put yourself in their shoes. Like,
Right.
Pretend that white is black for a minute. And do you see that there's some systematic racism? That your people weren't allowed to vote? That your people weren't allowed to share restaurants and
Right.
buses and drinking fountains until 50 years ago? Like, yeah, it exists, and we can't just write off that it doesn't exist.
Right. It definitely happened. It is history.
Right. So, but I don't think I don't think it gives anybody a pass to say, well, because you fall into this group of people, you also
Right.
fall into the same historical definition, or not definition, but explanation of how we got to this point.
Right.
So,
And the bottom line really is that nowadays there's a lot of racial tension, but you got to do things that'll help, not hinder. And if you just start attacking white people, saying they're all privileged without knowing their story, without
Although-
knowing, you're not going to help.
while I completely
Same thing goes for white
100
people. They just start attacking, and say, oh, whatever.
Oh yeah, Mexicans are the problem. Oh, Muslims are the problem. No, I haven't seen that recently.
I haven't either. So weird.
So, but I don't know. As far as the whole, like, we got way off from Elizabeth Warren. On
Yeah,
that.
we did.
But I think that as far as Elizabeth Warren's story goes, and as far as the other goes, like, there's something to be said about how people, whether you're a congresswoman trying to slow down the process in which the government runs, or whether you're a black or white guy looking at the person across from you, maybe just step back for a second and think about what you're doing, because I think a lot of times if people like Elizabeth Warren and people like Chuck Schumer would step back and actually think about what their words are doing, what kind of effects that come from these types of pauses.
Right.
What
Are you having
kind
a good effect or are you having a bad effect?
right. Then you can very much...
People are starting to die. Like, there are these instances now where the riots are getting out of hand. Someone was shot at the Milo thing. Not at the Berkeley, but the one before that. Obviously, we got KKK guys floating down
Right.
rivers.
And I think
people are going to start dying, and calm down,
yeah,
everyone. Like, do
just
we
like-
really want a civil war going on at the same time
Right.
we're doing
And
everything
I think it is definitely relatable, because I think that just like black and white or race tensions, I would think it's bigger than black and white, but just like race
Right.
tensions are at an all-time high, so are political tensions.
Yeah.
And people look at my side is the right side, and it doesn't matter what the other side says. There can't be any rational thoughts on the other side. We need to shut the other side down, and that's not healthy. Whether
No.
you're talking about race or whether you're talking about religion or whether you're talking about political affiliations, it's not
Right.
a healthy
And
place
even if
to
Mitch
be.
McConnell was shutting her down just to get on with the process, like, you have to realize that that's going to be viewed as a assault against free speech.
Right.
And even I can't get on board with that. It's like, no, just let her
Yeah.
talk. She's dumb. Just
Yeah,
let her say
well,
her dumb
and
shit, and then
if,
we'll
you
say,
know,
hey, that's
And
stupid.
the devil's advocate isn't having this conversation if he doesn't pull that rule, because she would have got up, she would have read all her stuff, and you and I would have seen it in the news and been like, oh, it's just Elizabeth Warren being dumb
Doing dumb.
Elizabeth Warren again.
Yep.
And we wouldn't have thought about it. But because she got shut down, now it's a thing. And now she's gotten way more notoriety from it than she was popular anyway amongst the people that she's popular with.
Right.
But people that don't like to talk about her, like me and you, wouldn't have been talking about her today if that didn't happen. So I think it's just a good lesson that everybody calm it down and really think about your actions, because we have a new administration in front of us.
Yes, we do.
have so things are gonna change, and I don't think that if I don't have a problem with the Democrats playing opposition if they're stopping something bad. That's obviously opinionated, and so you have to weigh the pros and cons.
Right.
But I don't think that shutting things down just to shut them down is any better than what Republicans did
No.
during 8 years of
Look at you,
Barack
Ted
Obama.
Cruz. Like, what did you get accomplished again?
Right,
Nothing.
nothing.
A lot of furloughs.
Right, a lot of green eggs and ham sales probably went through the roof.
Right. Woohoo.
But
Good job, bud.
I don't know. I think it would be good for everybody to just kind of
I think we agree on that one.
Yeah.
Yep.